Okay, welcome to our Zoom for week 3. Excuse me 1 second here. Sorry, I'm a few minutes late on the meeting. Doesn't look like anyone was here. I didn't get any notifications. Nevertheless, I'm about 5 or 8, I guess 8 minutes late starting the meeting, so I do apologize for that. I'm having some internet connection problems. I mentioned in the announcements that I would be away from my regular office at another location for a meeting today, and I tried to make it back to my office. Was not going to make it, so I stopped in here to a Panera, which is, Paneras around the country are kind of, those and Starbucks are kind of my office away from my office, if you will, because they had good internet connections typically, but today was not a day that they had good internet connections, so I've been going back and forth with this thing for since about 10 till 4. So about a half hour, I guess, I've been trying to pull this together. Nevertheless, I was able to pull it up now. I was not able to pull up the PowerPoint that I wanted to show you because it is online through our CCCK class. This is a great week, and I did want to have some PowerPoints to share with you from the presentation. You have access to those already, so don't worry about it. You have those. So take a look at those and glean from them what you will, because I really do love this week. We're talking about shaping behavior and reinforcement and motivation and things such as that. So we got our, Skinner talking about how to shape behavior and how to reward behavior. And, we have our conditioning, of course, operant and classical. And I'm going to share a couple things with you here. Some of you have shared some really great things already in our discussion, which, by the way, if you don't know, I think you do. I got an email from Dean telling me this some weeks ago, Dean Croker, that they are actually opening up the weeks ahead of time now. I'm not exactly sure how soon you can see them, but I do know that you can see them at least a few days before the actual week starts. I think it's a very good move on the part of the college. Dean Croker in his email said treating our students more like the adult learners that they are, and letting our learners decide when they want to go into the course. So I think that's a good move. I really do. So anyway, some of you have already gone in and posted, and some of the things that you posted are really good. I forget who it was exactly, but mentioned that she rewarded her son for some desired behaviors. I believe it was finishing his homework and working hard in his football practice, if I'm not mistaken. And she rewarded him, I think, with some money, like $10 or so. And if I read the post correctly and understood it correctly, it was something that would be unexpected. So what this actually does, I'm just kind of jumping right into the lecture here. This actually cultivates intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is what we really strive for. That's what we really want. Intrinsic motivation, when we have that, we do things without the expectation of a reward. We do that because it's the right thing to do. We do it because it's what we enjoy doing. For instance, if a child likes to read, or anyone for that matter, they pick up a book and read. They enjoy that they are motivated to do that intrinsically within. If you have someone who likes to clean house because they enjoy that process, or because they like to sit down in a nice and neat area, they enjoy that. That's intrinsic. As opposed to someone who is reading for a reward, or who is cleaning a house or their room for a reward, that is extrinsic motivation. They're doing it, and it's not bad. They're doing it, in order to get rewarded. If you take away the reward, the behavior then would stop. As opposed to someone who does something intrinsically, you reinforce that with an unexpected reward, like, oh, that was really nice. But they are going to continue to do what they were doing because they enjoyed doing it, because they didn't do it for an expected reward, because there was no reward expected, even though one was realized, that it wasn't something that was expected. So that's the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So I thought that was a very good post, and something that I'll probably reflect on more, and you can talk about that more in our discussion question. One of the things that you've heard me say in these discussions, I'm not going to be in here very long because the internet connection is not that great, but a couple of things I did. That's one of the things that I wanted to hit on. The other thing that I wanted to touch on was, operant conditioning, and I lost the word. Classical conditioning. One of the things that people talk about all the time when you talk about classical conditioning is the famous experiments with Pavlov, the Russian psychologist or scientist researcher, and his dogs. Pavlov, through a series of experiments and reinforcers and things that he did in his lab, he would ring a bell before he fed his dogs. And he did this over and over again. And so to the point that he could make the dog salivate just by ringing a bell without even introducing food, because the dogs got used to hearing a bell. That meant that they were going to have food. So this worked time and time again. What is not typically talked about or written about in the textbooks and the journal articles and things like that is the times that it failed. And this is what I mentioned before about adding some things on to this discussion that you won't necessarily get in the discussion questions or in your textbook or the PowerPoint slides. This is what you get for having me as a professor. So there were often times that the experiment failed. Not written about. When were these times the experiment failed? Oftentimes it was when Pavlov's research assistants were able to make this happen, and they would be excited to show Pavlov, and they would call him in to witness what they had done, and they would ring the bell, and the dogs wouldn't salivate. Well, they felt kind of silly, I bet, and Pavlov may have scratched his head. The students may have thought, well, he thinks that I didn't really do it, and Pavlov might think, why'd they call me in here for? But we also know that it didn't work when Pavlov would bring in outsiders to show them the work that he'd done. He would ring the bell after having trained these dogs, if you will, trained for lack of a better word. I think conditioned is a better word. Time and again, he would ring the bell, and the dogs would salivate. Try it again next time on down the line, so that he's sure it's going to happen. He would bring in outsiders to witness this, and he would ring the bell, and the dogs wouldn't salivate. Well, this is not written about, and I don't necessarily know why it's not written about, but we do know why it happened. Because dogs, when they are introduced to new stimuli, are focused on that new stimuli. So when outsiders came in that they were not used to having in the room when they were fed and hearing the bell ring, their attention went to the outsiders. They went to the strangers, or they went to Pavlov, and their mind did not make that connection because their mind was focused on new stimuli. And animals, dogs, need to have this. Dogs are tamed and domesticated, but they weren't like that a couple thousand years ago. So they had to be very keen to any change in their environment, and their attention had to be focused on that change in environment for survival. Whether something may be attacking them, or they maybe have to go get food. So now we know that, and we also know that the same thing happens for human beings. If a lot of times we're used to doing something, but if something new comes in, we get distracted. This happens a lot. The best example I can think of is, and this has probably happened to everybody. You leave. You're in your house, and you leave, and you walk into another room. You may be going, say, from your living room. You go to do something or get something from your bedroom, and on the way there, you forget what it is. Why did I come in this room? I came in. I left. I came in here for a purpose. This has happened, right? Oftentimes it helps. Not every time, but oftentimes it helps. And we usually try and do this subconsciously, or not subconsciously, but there's a way to get back what we're thinking. We go back and backtrack our steps and see if then we can remember when we go back into the previous room, let's say in this case, the living room. And oftentimes it does help, because now the change in environment has not happened. So it triggers our mind. Anyway, so that's a little bit of an aside for Pavlov and his dogs. We can condition children and others by reinforcing the desired behavior. One of the things we want to avoid is this term from psychologists called over-justification. That's where you over-reward a behavior. For instance, if you see a child that's already reading, he has that intrinsic motivation that he's reading, and you give him like not one Skittle, but a whole jar of Skittles. That will actually extinguish the behavior. The psychologists call it over-justification. It's good to give a reinforcer that fits the behavior. If it's a mild change in behavior, then it'd be a mild reinforcer. I see this happen all the time with parents and teachers even. They will give too much for the desired behavior. Sometimes they withhold it. Also, as soon as you catch a child doing that behavior, you want to give that reward. Sometimes, especially when we're dealing with a difficult child or behavior that's difficult to shape, and the child finally does comply with what we hope him to do, that pro-social behavior, we sadly will say, I'm going to make you wait for this reward. Well, just because it's kind of our comeuppance, or we don't want to give it away so fast. I've seen teachers do this. I've seen parents do this. That really is counterproductive. As soon as that child complies, we need to reward him. And somebody mentioned in the post that to verbally say what it is that we're happy about that the child did, and I think that's important. Skinner may not agree, and in a laboratory it may not be necessary, but in the real world I think it's a good idea. So those are the things I wanted to touch on. I'm not going to stay here long. I'm the only one on here. We're going to go with Micah 6:8 for our keywords. I'll be in touch with you through the course room, but I'm not going to keep you on here with this recording much longer. I'm losing internet and power and everything else. And we got in the main things I wanted to get in, and hope you enjoy it. And we will see you in the course room.